Hi everyone, welcome back to my UGC NET Psychology lecture series. Imagine psychology as a vast river. Today when we study it for UGC NET, it looks like one unified subject, but in reality, it didn't begin as one stream. It began as four different rivers flowing from four very different minds. And also understanding these four founding paths is not just important for your exam, it actually helps you understand why psychology sometimes feels confusing, divided, and yet fascinating. So, in today's video, we are going to explore the four foundational figures who shaped academic psychology. Those are Wilhelm Wundt, Sigmund Freud, William James, and Wilhelm Dilthey. And by the end, you will not only remember them, you will feel the difference between their approaches. Let's begin in a laboratory in Germany in 1879. This is where Wilhelm Wundt officially established psychology as a scientific discipline. Before Wundt, psychology was mostly philosophy, people just thinking about the mind. But Wundt said, no, we can measure it, observe it, experiment on it. He introduced the method of introspection, but not the casual kind we do when we say, I feel sad today. His introspection was highly controlled. For example, imagine you are shown a light and asked to report your immediate experience, not your interpretation, not your memories, just the raw sensation. Wundt believed that by breaking down consciousness into its basic elements like sensations, feelings, and images, we could understand the structure of mind. This approach later came to be known as structuralism. Think of Wundt like a chemist. Just as a chemist breaks down water into hydrogen and oxygen, Wundt wanted to break down the mind into its smallest components. But here's the catch. Human eye isn't as stable as chemicals. If I show the same object to two people, their inner experiences might differ. And that limitation opened the door for the next major shift. Across the seas in America, William James looked at Wundt's approach and thought, why are we trying to break the mind into pieces? Why not ask what the mind does? And this is how functionalism was born. James was less interested in the structure of consciousness and more interested in its purpose. Why do we think? Why do we feel? How does consciousness help us adapt to the environment? Imagine you are walking in a forest and suddenly you hear a loud noise. Wundt would ask, what are the sensations you experience? The sound, the feeling, and the perception. But James would ask, how does this help you survive? Maybe it triggers fear, which prepares you to run. So for James, consciousness is like a tool. It evolved because it helps us function better in a real life. This is why his approach feels so modern, almost like evolutionary psychology. While Wundt was studying conscious experience in labs and James was studying its function, Sigmund Freud took a completely different route. He said you are both missing the biggest part, that is the unconscious. Freud argued that most of our thoughts, desires, and behaviors are driven by forces we are not even aware of. Have you ever said something and immediately thought, why did I say that? Or had a dream that felt strange but meaningful? Freud believed these are not random, they are windows into the unconscious mind. He introduced ideas like repression, where painful memories are pushed out of awareness, and defense mechanisms, where the mind protects itself from anxiety. For example, if someone fails an exam and blames the teacher instead of accepting their own lack of preparation, that could be rationalization, a defense mechanism. So unlike Wundt's controlled lab experiments or James' adaptive functions, Freud's approach was clinical and interpretive. He focused on case studies, therapy sessions, and deep analysis of individual lives. His psychology was not about general laws, it was about hidden meanings. Finally, we come to someone who is often overlooked but extremely important, Wilhelm Dilthey. Dilthey challenged the very idea that psychology should be studied like physics or chemistry. He argued that human experience is fundamentally different from natural phenomena. You cannot fully understand a human being just by measuring reactions. You need to interpret their lived experience. Let's say someone is crying. One might study the sensory experience. James might ask what function the emotion serves. Freud might look for the unconscious conflict, but Dilthey would ask, what does this experience mean to that person? Maybe they are crying because of loss or relief or even happiness. The same behavior can have completely different meanings depending on the context. And this is why Dilthey emphasized or understanding through empathy and interpretation. So if you look at these four parts together, you start to see why psychology is so diverse today. Wilhelm Wundt gave us the scientific experimental foundation. William James gave us the focus on adaptation and real-world functioning. Sigmund Freud opened the door to the unconscious and clinical psychology, and Wilhelm Dilthey reminded us that human experience must be understood, not just measured. So the next time you feel confused about different schools of psychology, remember, this confusion is actually the richness of the field. Psychology was never meant to be one single approach. It was built from multiple perspectives, each capturing a different side of human nature. And for your UGC NET exam, if you remember one thing, remember this. Wundt studied structure, James studied function, Freud studied the unconscious, and Dilthey studied meaning. 4 parts, 1 discipline, and that's what makes psychology so powerful. And before you go, don't forget to check the practice questions in the description, and do not forget to subscribe.